I call to order the planning and zoning commission meeting of Thursday, January 26th. Your mic is up, sorry. 2023. It's 5:30 p.m. And call to order. Present, we have, I think, a full house. We have Lee Shea, Charles on Zoom, myself, Kathy Green, Angela, Todd. And for staff, we have Phil, Ron, and Piper. And our town council liaison, Dan Enright.
And Allie Slayton is remote.
Oh, I can't see her, but
She's on Zoom
Okay, thank
and
you.
upstairs if you need her.
Thank you, Phil. All right, so our first item of business is approval of the minutes dated December 15th. Kathy,
I move to approve the December 15th minutes, 2022 as presented.
Second.
Angela seconds. Any comment? Discussion? Shall we vote? All in favor? That's unanimous. Great, the minutes are approved. There seems to be some staff announcements. Ron, Phil?
I'd like to thank the town clerks for putting that in the newspaper
Yeah.
today.
You're welcome.
It's for the alternate seat that's been vacant for quite a while. So hopefully we'll get some interest. Have anything else?
Just a brief sort of quick tidbit about the upcoming March retreat. I know it's still a ways away. We are kind of looking for topics for the retreat. Kathy did provide a couple to me via email. One of those would be the discussion of, the PUD incentives or benefits. We had a brief discussion about that, but maybe sort of drilling down on that with Park and Town Council. The other item she provided was ballot question 300. Either, moving forward with that, what are we going to do with that ballot measure? The other one was maybe trying to require a secondary unit on lots that are 5,000 square feet or larger. Updates to the website, and then maybe some more construction mitigation discussions.
And I've thought of two things since in parking. I still feel that it's a travesty that we only require one parking space per residential unit in the residential zone. And when it's a garage, it's always full of bicycles and snowboards and skis and other things that the cars never make it in. So I would really love to require a second parking space even for remodels. And if we can't do that, then I would like to make the parking space bigger, especially in a garage. I cannot tell you how many garages I built where you could maybe get a Subaru in the garage with if there were no bicycles, but you couldn't get a Subaru with, the Thule box thing on the top, the geometry of the garage door and the driveway just didn't work. So I want functional garages, and I would like more parking, because it's a nightmare to find parking this winter and any winter, and it's not much better in the summer. So that's one thing I wanted to bring up. And then on my PUD incentives, where I brought up like deed restricted commercial space, how to define it and what it should cost. I wondered, because I'm kind of over PUD hotbeds, but then suddenly I thought about deed restricted affordable hotbeds. And that could be a nightmare to go to, because how do we define what's affordable and who gets to rent them? But I mean, I think that would also help broaden our community to have, units that are $200 a night instead of $791 or whatever I just read as the average daily rate. And so I think I'm much more interested in those hotbeds than I am in just, the mega bucks hotbeds, because it would allow different people to come here, and it will allow some of our annual events and nonprofits to have affordable spaces for their students, for their instructors, for everything. So those were the two things I wanted to add on to my list.
Great.
I thought of a few. Did anybody else think of some? Well, the ones I thought of were basically, there are some issues that town council has asked, questions that town council has asked us, or things that we've sent to them that seem to me unresolved. And one of them was, they asked us, what would you think about changing zoning? And it was kind of a vague question. Honestly, it was about that vague. But I think we should have a discussion about what did they mean by that? And how do they feel about it? I mean, before we start further down that road. The other one that came to my mind was we had sent them a proposal for upzoning, which is, I call it a short form, which is kind of a variant on what Kathy raised, and they rejected it at that time, but now we have a different town council, so let's continue the discussion. And finally, the last one was Main Street, putting things in commercial uses in the space that are supposed to be commercial uses. So establishing some sort of way that we actually use the commercial space is required to be built. Because, it's been 3 years now that the Peterson building has had a vacant bottom floor. And it's unfortunate. It's the first thing you see when you come into town. That's the most noticeable one, but there are plenty others. I'm just picking that as one example. So those are the ones that I thought of. Others, thoughts?
I think, were you about to say something?
No, I completely agree with the vacant space. I was actually just going around town today trying to figure out what was being used with some of the vacant space. So there's quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, we required people to build, to dedicate part of their storefront to commercial space, not to make it completely residential. And what appears to be happening is that that's just vacant in a lot of spots. And that's just unfortunate. We should figure out what we can do about it. Town council.
Yeah, since the vision plan was accepted, I had an interesting number of chairlift conversations with people who think I'm still on council. But
You can actually do something?
yeah, want to want council, but it's interacting with us in heart to examine the attendance at festivals and
When you say examine,
like reconsider what happened during the pandemic and do we really want to go back to 25,000 people at Bluegrass and Blues and Brews and
so you mean limit attendance?
limits? Yeah,
Consider smaller.
consider smaller festivals and all the impacts on everything. It's commercial, it's Parks and Rec, and it's open
Public
space
infrastructure.
and infrastructure and everything else that,
Wastewater.
Mhm.
We tend to just through case approve. And they've got, we're grandfathered into 20,000. No, you're not. That's,
Who's getting 20,000? I thought
Yeah,
it was
so-
more like 12.5
No.
plus the backstage
yeah,
people.
but that's the perception.
Okay.
That's how many people show up in town, whether or not they can sell 10,000 tickets or not.
Angela?
Yeah, I'd like to ask council about revisiting the expansion of the walkway on the south side of Main Street.
Expansion of the.
The wider
wider
sidewalk,
sidewalks.
like the north side has.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
So, yeah, that would be Main Street improvements, but especially the wider south side sidewalk.
right. There was a committee established,
Long ago.
long ago, when we first moved here, in the beginning of the last decade. And it got some improvements, but it never went anywhere past that. So I think it's time to revisit that. There's some drainage that could definitely be improved.
Mhm.
The walkways are just too narrow for the number of people that we have. And I just think there's some other improvements that could be brought to bear along with that. So.
And I'm gonna pile onto that one and talk about enforcement of the outdoor dining areas and signage and everything else. I'll just pick on the Sheridan as an example. There is public infrastructure, there's benches, and light posts, and then we have the Sheridan's outdoor dining fence, and what is supposed to be an 8-foot sidewalk is down to 3. And particularly if somebody parks a bike there, then it's down to 2.
Well, I think the whole bike parking system needs to be revisited. Townwide, I think there are inadequate provisions for that. And there should be a whole bicycle planning effort for both getting around as well as infrastructure.
Is that us?
I think.
It isn't, but it's part of planning.
Yeah.
And so that's why I bring it under that, not under land use per se. It's more circulation, but they're intertwined. So it's how you use, rights of way. It doesn't come from us. Who's going to bring it up? So maybe someone else takes it on, but we should at least begin that discussion. Same with, pedestrians. I think pedestrians are a little more, it's a little more organized, and that's an effort, but I think bicycles are everywhere, which is wonderful. We want to promote that, but we're not very good at providing for them.
And all this made me think before Angela said it about pedestrianization. It's challenging to walk right now, and part of the challenge is the town failing to do snow removal. So, the alleys are
Timely,
treacherous.
yes.
There's big chunks of sidewalk that belong to the town that aren't moved. There's Main Street, crossing Main Street. And then I go along right in this block, right out here. I can get on the north side and the sidewalks are all perfect. And I get to the end, the town has pushed this berm of snow, and it's like climbing over a little baby Mount Everest to get back onto Gregory where there's, or back onto North, this North Street and whatever, but it's really difficult. And there's, snow removal needs to think of pedestrianization strongly.
That's true.
If I may, on that, I certainly hear those concerns. We did have an update from Kyle Beck, our new public works director, at our last full council meeting. The long and short is that public works is still down 4+ full-time employees. So is greatly understaffed, and with
I listened to that.
the
Council.
record-setting amount of snow we have, that compounds and does create challenges. So while there's certainly, I'm sure there's room for improvement in many ways, that is at least a majority of the problem in mind.
Dan, if we're not paying those people, can't we hire some private contractors to come and?
There
clean
are no
snow?
private contractors.
We do a lot of work as the town with United Companies or TGI, whatever.
TGI,
And they help us. They get a lot of our street and utility work and stuff. And I think we should be able to negotiate just some kind of agreement where we would be on an on-call winter customer with priority. I kind of have privileges with them for work that I did with them decades ago. Then when I call up and ask for something, they come and do it. And I'm asking for a small ask. But I think the town just needs to negotiate a special contract with them that they'll come when we desperately need them, and they might be able to pull it off. We can't, but they might be able to pull it off. And one of the sidewalks I'm complaining about is in front of the Voodoo Lounge. Telluride Arts doesn't rent the Voodoo Lounge anymore, and no one shoveled that sidewalk. It's like, it was almost a little cliff the other day. It was hysterical. But
I don't think it's correct that there are no, because I think they're fully booked. And if we had an advance arrangement, as Kathy is suggesting, then perhaps we could get some of their time.
I'm happy to talk to Kyle and continue to examine possibilities, because
Yeah.
obviously there are challenges, and some of the streets and sidewalks are
Bad.
bad. Correct.
Yeah.
no, I know it's bad, but we desperately need to get people hired to deal with the pedestrianization and.
Of course, by the March joint meeting, all the snow will be gone.
And then I would like to say, this is almost as much snow as we used to get 40 and 30 years ago. This is not a record-breaking snow anywhere close to it yet.
Todd, did
If
you
you're
have something?
20, it is, right?
What?
If you're 20 years old, it is.
Yeah, if you're 20 years, it might be, but in the last, 50 or 60 years of the ski area, it's like a blip.
Todd, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, and again, as a retreat topic, if you look at page 2 of today's paper as an example, the Diamond Ridge group.
Oh, yeah.
Here are 3 really simple, stupid, why isn't town doing this?
Well, guess what?
Well, it's not that easy and it's not that simple and it's not that stupid unless you're talking about who wrote the,
And yeah.
but we as town never respond to any of that.
Yeah, and so the perception.
And the
continues.
perception is, well, these guys go,
Don't have it together.
yeah.
In fact, all of those sites are under study right now.
Or-
Well,
or-
not only are they
or-
under study, but
Toddy-
one of them is full of public works.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that we develop with town council some sort of presentation about what town?
Well, no, but it's how do we effectively communicate elements of our master plan and what we're working on so that the idiots don't rule the roost.
And I'm sure we'll talk about affordable housing in many aspects of this retreat.
Yes.
But I don't understand why we in Telluride or Mountain Village or the county have never required adequate employee housing from the larger employers. Why is it the responsibility of the 3 big governments to build every unit of employee housing? I just do not get that. It seems like the larger employers should be required. And then they can shut up about not having enough employees.
So one other thought I had, is that town council may have some ideas already, and it might be helpful
Sure.
to communicate those to us in advance so we could think about them.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, I think after talking to the historic preservation team, they are going to work with Hart, I think at the next meeting to sort of workshop some ideas. As soon as we hear from everybody, Ron and I and whoever else will sort of craft an agenda, maybe send it out for some comments or something beforehand so we can sort of get on the same page.
But even before we get down to the agenda, it's just like, if
Right.
it might be helpful to share what town council or Hart wants to talk about, so that we could I don't know, it just seems like that would be helpful. The more preparation we do in advance, the more productive it's.
Absolutely.
Angela.
Yeah, on the affordable housing front, Boulder has now an ordinance. And now Denver is doing an ordinance that is requiring / allowing accessory units in every backyard.
Allowing or
What's that?
allowing or
Or required.
mandating?
Well, I'm saying, we have that proposal to allow, why can't we require? I think we could have a substantial case made for why. And so therefore, I think that should be explored, and looking at those ordinances in particular would be, I think, helpful. Challenges they may have had, how it, how it actually works through permitting and review and all of that. I know an architect in Boulder who has been there forever, who spearheaded that. And now that is becoming her primary market, where she's helping people figure out how to get a unit so that they can afford to stay there. It's a different quotient than what we have here, but people who are there can supplement their income. But in our case, it's would be a way in which to reinforce distributing affordable housing throughout town, rather than having to find big parcels of land wherever they are to try to add, units.
Nothing?
Piggyback on that, some of us on this board, Dan was maybe on this board. James did research and had a whole list of strange towns or cities, surprising, like conservative towns in Florida that don't allow single family housing. You have to build at least a duplex on your lot. Now, one unit can be 350 square feet and the rest of it can be 5,000, whatever. But he had all that research. I wonder if any of those towns still have those programs or if they've blown up. I mean, it would be great if you could look in the town files and
Sure.
find that PowerPoint. It was fascinating, some of the examples. It wasn't Boulder, it wasn't Portland, it wasn't, you know, what we think of as the
Progressive,
liberal
right.
progressive towns. It was fairly conservative towns that realized that they needed density to house people and no more single family homes.
And caretakers.
Yeah.
And probably in that,
Yeah.
that respect. And
So-
I mean, our own Mountain Village requires, it, for Pete's sake. So I'm just thinking, I think you may need to think that through again.
So before we leave this topic, Leisha, Charles, do you have any thoughts here?
I echo a lot of what you guys brought up, just about everything that, really good, interesting points. So
Okay.
I concur.
More thoughts one more time next time,
I'm
next
trying,
meeting.
I'm trying, and everything's,
Charles?
I would still
You-
love.
Muted.
Oh, am I muted?
Try again.
Yeah. Okay, can you hear me?
It shows you're unmuted on our end, but we can't hear you, Charles.
I had
Oh.
this problem.
Volume,
Sometimes Zoom sets other microphone settings if you like right click in the bottom. And make sure that the right
Right.
microphone is selected.
Try again?
Well, shucks. Charles just gets to listen.
go to chat and enter some ideas if you have any.
I don't think we're allowed.
We don't.
You don't have chat? Okay.
Oh, well.
Okay,
That's,
So we
that's
should
okay.
fix this because participating by Zoom is something that members of the public. also know.
Yeah.
If Charles emails either Ron or Phil, would you get it right now and we could see what his comments were?
Or
He certainly can.
can you get on the phone, his cell phone and try it that way? I did, I had the same
He has a
problem
cell phone.
at the Heart meeting. I
Yeah.
couldn't,
well, you had several problems. You
Yeah.
had a power outage, you had the internet go out. You had,
Yeah.
oh my goodness.
He's calling us. I think he's
Okay.
gonna, or he's gonna maybe go on
Somebody-
Zoom on the phone and see if that works better.
Y'all just keep going. Or
He wants us to move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
We'll hear from you, I'm sure, in the future. All right, so do we have any further thoughts about the retreat? People want to say right now, we'll have another chance to talk about this next time.
Yeah, we'll certainly keep you posted as it moves along. Oh, the town attorney, Ally Slayton, said she can hear him, so maybe our speakers are not on.
Oh,
Our speakers are on. He
Okay.
can hear us.
Hmm.
Let me
is our
see if
volume
I-
on?
Have Ally
Oh,
try to
maybe
talk.
Let me try this.
Okay.
Try again, Charles.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The only other thing I was thinking, I would still just love for us to have I know we kind of look at housing demand, especially affordable housing, and we know there's a demand, but the other side of that is still the supply of housing, and to have a ongoing, whether that's every year or every 2 years, a housing inventory, so we know how much housing is exactly short-term, how much is long-term rental, how much is only part-time versus full-time residents, just so going forward, we kind of know what the trends are, which direction we're going.
No, that should be an annual thing.
Well, and that's one of the to-dos and
Right.
our vision plan.
Discuss it because before we get the plan, we can do that, or at least we can start it.
And in the olden days, I keep bringing them up, sorry. We had just a map of all the structures in Telluride, and our board would work on coloring each one of the codes. It didn't take that long, and especially if we had a joint heart meeting, which we're now like never going to have again. It was really fun to color, and then we could go through, Telluride Lodge and like guess unit by unit within a really high degree of accuracy, what use each unit was in, because there was a diversity of people between the staff and the two boards being present. And it was actually a very fun team building event. So I would love to see that come back. As primitive as it is, it probably was way more accurate than sending out a survey and getting very few answers.
We can look for that map. I'm not sure where it is. I mean,
We did them every few years. Lance would come and, everybody.
I was here
Yeah,
when,
yeah.
when you were doing that.
Coloring, and then you could count up the colors you had and see how they differed from the previous time.
Well, we could also look at resources that the town has, such as short-term rental licenses.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you have a license doesn't necessarily mean that you use it that way, but at least it's a piece of information. That sort of thing.
Okay.
Well, I know the clerks have been working on that for years, and there are just too many holes in
Yeah.
it. It needs some help in identifying what the holes are and how to fill them.
Should have a GIS map real soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a piece of.
I'm working on
Yeah.
that, so.
All right, well, that sounds like we have a lot of stuff to talk about at this retreat. It'll go on for weeks.
Better have lots of catering involved.
Yeah.
Let's proceed to the public hearing items. Ron, Phil, who's doing this?
Yes.
Ron,
Share the screen.
since this is not a project, I'm not going to read the land use code. These are the land use code amendments. Do I have to read all
Yes.
this? Yes, okay. And recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission Council regarding ending land use code Article 3, district regulations Article 5, development review procedures Article 6, land use and development applications, and Article 7, historic and architectural review for the purpose of establishing new requirements, public hearing and meeting notices. Staff members, Ron. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair Laney, Constantine. This is an item or we talked about a couple of meetings ago, something that we call low hanging fruit. A cleanup of our ordinances, our land use code in particular. Purpose for this proposed ordinance is to establish clarity to the public noticing procedures. And specifically, we're proposing standardization of noticing deadlines, a creation of a new framework for noticing levels, and a simplified renumbering of code references and citation. So typical language in our code, this is how we implement our noticing requirements. Each application type, we identify specific sections. In this case, 5-204B1A and 5-204B2 and 5-204B3. So what that means is that in order to implement, we have to go to those sections of the land use code and determine what's excluded from the noticing requirements or what's not identified as opposed to what's being called out. And that's not a big problem necessarily, but when you apply it to all of our application types, it becomes pretty cumbersome, especially for someone who's just, when I first came here, I thought, wow, how do you keep up with all these noticing
That's a
requirements?
pretty interesting graphic. You ought to
Mhm.
Yeah,
make a poster of that and put it up there.
Yeah. that's
so
good.
it makes your head spin.
Yeah.
So what we're proposing to do is provide an easier format. We're replacing the language and the format of the language. And identifying section 5-204 with the following requirements. 5-204- or point A is the notice required. Then we have the manner of notice, which includes 4 different types, including the newspaper publication, the mailing of notice, posting of a sign, and the town website publication. So in other words, these are all clearly identified with separate sections in the code. And then we're introducing a new section, which is the level of notice. And I'll get into that a little bit. And then the content of the notice, affidavit that's required, and then the adequacy of notice. So it's clearly formatted so that we don't have to struggle and try to discern the way we do now. So we are creating 4 notice levels, and it's depending on the type of application. A notice level 1 would be the sign posting and town website notice. Notice
By the
level,
way, just to interrupt, you could show that again, the first level 1
oops.
on the right. Upper right there.
I'm
There's
trouble.
now a
That's
QR
good.
code rather than having to fill it out specifically for everything. I don't know if anybody's noticed that, but
Yeah, and that's,
there's a QR code so that they can reuse these.
yeah, and that's what I'm
That's
gonna
great.
talk
yeah.
about at the very end here. Notice level 2 would be the town website and a newspaper notice, and these apply to mainly the HARC applications. Notice level 3 would include the sign posting, town website, and the mail out notice. And then finally, notice level 4 would include all of the notice requirements, and these apply to most of the planning applications, subdivisions, and zoning only requires a newspaper, but these apply to most of the planning and development applications. So right now, the notice deadlines vary, making it very difficult. Newspaper notice, some of the notices are 10 days prior to the hearing. Some are 15 days prior to the hearing. Mail out notices are typically 10 days. I'm sorry, 15 days. The sign posting typically 10 days. And the website publications are typically 15 days. We're eliminating all of that. Everything's going to be a 15-day notice. So we don't have to, part of the problem is we're always in the position of thinking, did I do the right, did I miss something? By simplifying it, I think we're going to take care of that problem. Also, the affidavit that is required by the applicant has to be provided to us 10 days prior to the public hearing rather than 5 days that we have it currently.
Good.
So getting to the signs, these are work in progress. What we want to do is eliminate the signs that have to be printed every application, every hearing, and have a sign that we can use multiple times. And environmentally, that's a sustainable way of doing it. Makes a lot of sense. And in the sign, as Angela was saying, we would provide a QR code where anyone can access all of the data or the notice requirements from our town website. Again, we're still working on how this will look. We may include additional information on the sign, but generally we try to simplify it and make them as attractive as we can. Just to add to this, we're having problems right now with the printer. What's the name of it?
Paper chase.
Paper Chase.
Oh, paper chase.
And it's been recently, they are overbooked, I guess, and can't produce for us like they used to. This would take care of that problem as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, with that, that's the proposal, and be glad to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Kathy?
I'm glad to see that there are new signs because in my neighborhood where there's a lot of projects that have been in the review process, no one's ever taken down one of their previous one-time use review signs, so.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if they're gone, or if they're going back for a new thing, I have to stop and read it, or whatever, they slowly decay, so that's great, if it's a sign they have to return back into the town for reuse, I approve of that. I'm still a little nervous about how online we are, because I think there are people in our community for many reasons, both economic and also education and maybe cultural reasons that don't use our website well, or don't use their telephone in a sophisticated way, don't have unlimited data on their phone. So I think we're kind of being classist when the more online we go, I think the more we're discriminating against older people and less wealthy people and less educated people. So I want to make sure we always have an alternative for someone without every resource. And then when I go on the town website and I get that first page and I want to look up something, how do I find it?
There's the question.
How do you find
Yeah,
the
I get to
notice?
that big town website and it's got like 4 buttons across the top. Then it has engage Telluride, but that's just about,
Well, there's,
two
I mean,
plans.
you click Planning and Zoning Commission.
yeah, but
Mhm.
if I'm not on the Planning and Zoning Commission, I had to explain to people today what Planning and Zoning Commission was.
Yeah.
What are the meeting you're going to? Oh, what do you do there?
Yeah,
Well,
well, we could probably, and
The QR code could make it more direct.
but what if you're somebody that doesn't do that? Let's say you're somewhat of a Luddite.
Well, the QR,
Call Ron.
I interpret all notification signs as just a notification, because I recognize when you scan a QR code when you're walking around, it's almost impossible to review development plans.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's not great to say, I'm gonna stand outside and look at a house plan. But it is just a notification sign. And I think we do need to encourage people to come into the office or call me if they have questions. But I understand what you're saying. Not everyone scans QR codes. People that do scan QR codes still probably have to call me.
Right.
and we can, I mean, we do have new staff, deputy town manager and our new, I'm not sure what the title-
Communications manager.
Communications manager, that we can work with them to maybe have a place where it just says public notices on the very
Yeah,
first
I think
page or
that would be
something.
really helpful because I've already put it in my list for town council retreat that we've got engaged Telluride. I've finally figured, I think I'm signed in for that and I could go there, but I don't need to look at either Lot L or the community vision plan at the moment. Then there's something called current projects and you know, most people think that means what's going on in their next door neighbor's yard and you turn it on and here it is, Lot L and the vision plan all over again. So why don't you have something that says development projects or something that's right front and center that allows, because I'm getting a lot of feedback from friends
Yeah,
downtown. I go to the post office, I get jumped on about I can't find out what's going on in my neighborhood.
we have a.
We seem
good
to
map
move
for that.
directly into discussion.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Let's add, does anybody have any questions for Ron? Is it a question, Todd?
Well, it's not a question, but
And then we'll say,
focusing on our proposed motion. We're not talking about everything else that's wrong with the system, but moving this piece of it forward. And yeah, keep on taking down the enhancements, but this is, in my opinion, a great step forward to cut through a lot of confusing mishmash and straighten it out.
Piper, do we have any public on the phone? On the
No,
line? Okay, then public comment is irrelevant. So we can continue discussion then. Anybody else have any comment about this?
one of the comments I got from another developer in town, and there's a lot going on in his personal neighborhood. He thought that the 1 week that when the packet comes out and then the meeting's approximately a week later, he felt like it did not give him as a neighbor enough time to look at it all and get his comments in. So this would be a different iteration, but I mean, the fact that there's at least 15 days notice, but if there's any way you could get the plans out, so whether it's board member, he goes, I don't know how board members, and he knows that Hark's workload is bigger than ours. He goes, I don't know how Hark can read and review all that stuff when I can't even get through my next door neighbor's project in the short time frame from the time it's released online till when the hearing's held. So I think that's a glitch we need to work on. The 15 days notice instead of 10 is the first step, but we got to do more about that, I would say. I all the time I'm trying to walk people through how to find this stuff online, and I can barely find it online. And it's important because there's so much going on.
Discussion? Are we ready to make a motion on this one?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Angela.
Staff proposed motion. I move to recommend, right? That's the place to start. I move to recommend to town council approval of the amendment to the land use code Article 3, zone district regulations, Article 5, development review procedures, Article 6, land use and development applications, and Article 7, historic and architectural review for the purposes of establishing new requirements for public hearing and meeting notices with the LUC amendment language attached to the staff memorandum dated January 19th, 2023, and with the findings of the staff memorandum dated January 19th, 2023. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on January 26th, 2023, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code.
Todd seconds.
Thank you. Any discussion of the motion? Nope. Should we vote? All in favor? Unanimous? Very good. The motion is approved.
I think with regard to what Kathy was saying about this and how this is implemented, I hope we can continue to get, give you some feedback on how that's actually working as we hear from our neighbors and
Okay.
as we try to use it ourselves. Because I think the principle is great, and I think just, working through the details of making sure it's working.
Okay.
I think the 15-day thing will probably help quite a bit.
Yeah, nothing's getting less noticing.
Mhm.
More noticing, so-
More time to work through it.
Correct.
Yes.
And Ron, just for information, when is this going to town council for review?
So let's see, next meeting, February.
Is it at the next meeting?
Yeah, I think it's the meeting in February for first reading. It's too early to get it
Like
on
the
the
7th or
January
something?
meeting.
It's the 22nd.
Oh,
We
no,
have
oh,
one.
22nd.
31st of January.
Yes, we have one
And
this
then-
coming Tuesday.
Yeah, it's too early to,
And the
I mean,
7th of
And that
March.
agenda's already set.
yeah, so we're,
I believe, I think it's the 21st.
Or the 14th of February?
Is it on Valentine's? I don't know.
There looks like there is one on the 14th of February.
14th of.
yeah, I think.
Oh, very romantic.
Yeah.
We didn't have any plans.
Sorry, you put me on the spot.
That's right. I just thought it would be helpful.
I
So,
will bring it up. I will bring this up in council reports though, this coming meeting, this coming. meeting.
I mean, I think in general, the board feels that it's great to simplify.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Give people more.
We've
notice,
leapt
and make it
ahead.
easier for the staff.
Reading ahead
it's
here.
Working on
It's a
refinements.
good baby step. We might want to follow up with a few more baby steps.
Sure.
Definitely.
All right, so let's proceed to our work session, which is called preparation for the upcoming comprehensive plan. Who's leading this discussion on staff?
I'm gonna lead it. It's pretty open-ended. Ron and I are starting the process to craft the RFP. And we really just wanted to touch base with everyone here to say, what's important for you guys? How do you envision this process going? This is sort of the first, formal discussion, even though it's in a work session, about how do you guys envision this process going? And so that's my leading introduction, but sort of tossing it back to you guys.
I think that what we saw from the experience with the visioning plan is that you cannot have too much public involvement. I think you did a great job in assembling the working group. And I would encourage you to, have a similar, if not identical, structure so that members of the community who are likely to have issues or specific angles that they are specific types of information are included as we move forward and they feel like their voices are being heard. And in fact, they are. So it's not only do they, are they welcome in the process, but also we get the information that they actually have. Angel.
Yeah, looking at principal, I guess it's under not principles of ability necessarily, but I was looking for a kickoff point, from this, and it looks like goals set for these various different items. Goal 1 and 2, for instance, under housing, it's organized that way, so that maybe it's a way to take those each and drill down to those, and that, I don't even know what the stage is, if we put out an RFP for the comprehensive plan, or we're just kind of figuring out how we proceed. But we should use this
Definitely.
as a jump off and as an organizational document, so that we, are following through with the thread of inertia that's been established.
Yeah, we might use the same people.
I think,
Yeah, and I think there are 14 identified goals among the things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think I would like us to try and prioritize them.
Yeah.
To identify no more than the top 5 that we go and dig in on.
When you say
Because
we, it's community.
this
Commission.
commission to start with, but that needs to then go to the public and it needs to go to staff, and everybody needs that input, but rather than, it's great that there's 14 instead of 320, but 14's too many.
It's a good thought. So we will be hiring a consultant.
Yeah, in fact, we're gonna send this as a part of the RFP.
Yeah.
So that they'll know that this is
The work we've already done.
already done
And
and
how are
it
you gonna
establishes the
bring it
core
up as-
values and
Yeah.
everything.
And then, so perhaps
there.
after we do that, we can work, as Todd suggested, with that consultant to identify or to focus on goals, and they can help us organize our discussion and investigation of them. Kathy.
I'm a little nervous about making it narrow because in the 1986 master plan, we put all these uses that we needed on the tailings pile, and then we were working on a plan in the mid-90s that blew up and never went anywhere. And still all the things, housing, parking, anything we needed, light industrial, I went out there on the tailings. And then like 10 minutes later, we get the court decision and it's very different. So it became obsolete. And then sadly, in the 2006 or 7 master plan, whatever we want to call it, we never mentioned early childhood education. So I think we really need to touch a wide base of things in our community. So someone coming in to propose some huge development or whatever realizes we do have big expectations from an environmental to a social justice. I don't want to just have 5 top things and then have all of a sudden our most crying need not be in the top 5 or even in the document. And that's the things that were left out of our last 2 master plans are probably as notable as what got in it. And that's one of my concerns. The other thing is, I think I heard on the radio when I was working and listening to the radio to town council that, like us, they didn't believe some of the demographics that were presented, in terms of population and median incomes and whatever. So I think we really need to go into this with really good measurable graph things, the information we need, and not just the latest census report that might have counted 3 people instead of 300 or some whatever they did wrong. And I want, whether that's a huge community survey that's not touchy-feely, but it's detailed, like, how many motor vehicles does your household have, things like that. And we have old ones to compare it to that will be interesting, or we should have those. So I think we need a really strong measurables. That's not a word I used to like, but I want a lot of information and measurables and data to
Trend.
base this
trending data.
Yes, I mean, that would be my point, that any data is a snapshot of where we are at a given moment. And the snapshot that we took a year ago might be different than the snapshot that we take now, but it is important to understand the trends over some time, because hopefully this master plan will last for a decade, maybe some period of time. And so the trends are what's important, not so much the absolute numbers. Yes, Angela.
Well, I'm looking at these goals and wondering if everyone feels we have something to say about every one of them. In other words, they're probably not, some of them are not within our purview. So within, I mean, we may have comments as community members, but we may not have any ability as a commission to influence that. Or maybe we do, and maybe that's something that we need to each go through these and say, okay, what role do we see P and Z can play in each of these? And it may be a supportive role, it may be taking the lead. It may be together with another commission or other staff department, a department.
Which ones we can have the most effect.
Yeah, so that we're not spinning our wheel talking about diversity when maybe that's not some, or healthcare, but we're not the people that are best able to do that. But we may have, I don't know that. I'm just saying that going through them and figuring out what we think our role is would probably be efficient and the most effective.
Kathy.
I might disagree. I don't think that everything in the master plan has to have a correlating land use code section to go with it. I mean, I think it is somewhat visionary and aspirational that we do want to have adequate medical care, that we do need better transportation and the infrastructure to go with it. We're not the committee that's going to adopt that or accept that. We're not the people that are going to size the sewer lines, any of that. But we need to lay out that that's our expectations as a community, not what is, what our little hands are tied by the land use code. This is still very visionary, even if it's not called the visionary plan. So I think that's super important, that it's really broad.
I've had experience with one city, not a town, but where we actually had modules, or we had groups, transportation, housing, economic development, people that were actually experts in those areas that were, you met separately and then came back together as a whole group. But
Well, we have a number of commissions who are
yeah,
focused on some of these areas more than
exactly.
open space, for example. So we can include them or ask them to consider something and then come back to us, or however we want to structure that. But we do have this in our town structure.
Sometimes I think we get hung up on the title of our commission, planning and zoning, when in fact we are planning as the umbrella. Land use, zoning, and all of that are just ways of implementing that. So we are planning here. We're not zoning anything. So I think it's important to kind of set the stage for what we consider our charge to be, and to look out further. And I'm not saying that these aren't within our purview. I'm just saying we need to go through that level of discussion and talk about what we think is a meaningful contribution moving forward.
Yes.
I felt with the consultants on this plan that when we brought up the community climate action plan, which is really new and recently adopted, or when we brought up the park master plan, which is new, and it happened during the pandemic, and I thought its process worked really well during the pandemic. That was very inclusive. We had some big Zoom meetings that were quite interesting, a lot of people on them. And whenever we brought up another plan, they were just like, eh. And we have plans that we put our heart and souls into, maybe not this sport, but other parts of our community have, and they're pretty recent. It's not the 1986 master plan. If they want to go about that, that's fine. But, you know, I want someone, whoever, however we hire them, who will take our existing plans and use all of them.
Hmm.
And work with all of our commissions as needed and not, you know, go, oh, you know.
That's out of our scope.
Yeah, Yeah.
Kind of question.
yeah,
Or
or whatever,
response, yeah.
but I mean, I don't want someone who thinks their way is the only way and that everything we've ever done as a community is wrong.
Well,
Cause I,
and we did budget 185,000, so that's 3 times the amount we spent on this. So
Okay.
we're gonna get some good data. I hope.
So how do you see this going? If you were to take it,
My concern is that, again, it relies on data, trending data, and we don't have a lot of data in any of our well, we do in some of the things, but and I'd like it to be something that we review annually once it's adopted. And we have an implementation plan in the back of our current plan, but a lot of plans, a lot of places that do it this way, they just put it on the shelf and then don't go back to it. I'd like it to be a living document where we review it every year and we say, this is what was implemented. We didn't do this year. Something that we use. And then I'd like the plan to have some reliance on our technology. We've got GIS technology that allows for what they call story maps, where you provide information. So it's not just a written document, it's actually a document, interactive. You can pull up maps and use it. But those are my big things that I'd like.
I think one of the things that we talked about in connection with developing the vision plan is to have a sort of ongoing data collection on certain important things. So every year we collect data about,
Yes.
you know, these things, and that goes into some of the
Yeah.
stuff you're talking about.
In fact, Santa Fe, they do an annual data trends report that came from the comprehensive plan originally, but it would be updated every year. And it would show how things were evolving or not evolving. Yeah, that's exactly what I'd like.
so we
to
can
do.
change trajectory if we need to.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
Mhm.
we're just fumbling.
Right, we're kind of
Our gut feeling about,
correct.
you know,
We're anticipating it's like an appendix each year, like here's the data for this year, sort of
Yeah.
attach it to the document.
So one task is to identify what we want to collect data about. And what that goes, you know, so that's
Yeah, and that's where the
not obvious, right? It's like-
consultants will guide us in that direction.
well, don't we have a fairly recent housing needs plan or
Yeah.
are we, yeah, so that would be great. I mean, that's a starting point. And I would love on this board to have a quick presentation about it. And it can be by Zoom. The person doesn't have to come in here at night and present in person. And then I thought that maybe as part of the whole fight over short-term rental permits in that election, that we were going to do a study of how many permits we had and how they were used. And where are we on that study? What century will we get that back so we can start our plan once we have it?
Well, we do have very comprehensive data of all permits and who holds them in the town of Telluride. That was done by the clerk's department this last year. So I'm sure somebody from the clerk's department would be happy to pass that on to you. Town council has commissioned a larger study on short-term rentals that we are hoping to have in front of us by early summer at the latest,
Okay,
in order to inform the public debate prior to the sunset of 2D.
okay.
So Dan, what does that study include?
Oh, well, let's see, I would have to look, I didn't look too specifically at the RFP on that one.
Yeah, and I
Be
didn't
frank off the top of my head.
have it with me.
I know they went ahead and initiated our own study rather than wait for the casts or whatever it was.
Yeah, and the idea behind that being that each one of these situations is so unique to the town that they cover that while context from other towns is valuable, to truly inform the decision for the town of Telluride, we need Telluride specific data.
Yeah, and we also had a deadline.
Well, it's surely that study that's coming is what we really need. It'd be great to have some report from the clerks and show a couple years trends about permits or what's going on and the belief of how many short-term rentals occur in different zone districts. But I would love to see the bigger study be a big part of, are very much available, like not rush into starting our comp plan when that study isn't even complete.
What's
And
your,
I think you're saying, what you said earlier was we need every bed in town identified and whether it has a body in it or not.
That's another component.
Well,
Is it occupied or not?
Yeah.
You know, and the same thing with vehicles.
Mhm.
You know,
there's a lot of data that we don't have.
there's a lot of data we don't have, so,
And what's
We-
not built on?
well.
What's the
Big-
projection
Yeah.
for some of these things? So we have
Yeah,
an
and
idea
that's,
that.
that's one thing that makes this plan, that'll make this plan unique is that we're pretty close to build out.
Yes,
So, no,
Everything's a tear down.
well,
Uh,
redevelopment or,
Seriously, as somebody who's built a lot of it, it's all gonna, it could all, much of our build community that has occurred during the ski era is eligible for bulldozing. And so anything,
Yes.
I would say there's nothing that's off the table, because I mean, I was told a whole lot of stuff in 1983 when I started on this board, it's too late for this, it's too late for that. Now I know it was not at all too late, and it's still changing right now, so.
Mhm.
yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we're at build out, but that doesn't mean there
Building
isn't
is gonna
future
stop.
redevelopment.
No, there's gonna be a lot of redevelopment. We've always had a lot of redevelopment because all the historic properties have been getting redeveloped over and over again. And you think you've just done the ultimate redevelopment on this historic building, and the next owner comes along and spends 10 times more. It's amazing, but
But-
we're not
but-
close.
recognizing that that's happening and will continue to happen. What I hope our comprehensive plan does is tries to get ahead of some of those to say, all right, if you're redeveloping a single family, it must
you
include,
must have
you know,
an accessory. unit.
and it must be,
15
and it
parking
must,
places.
well, not only it must include one, but it must be rented,
Yes.
occupied somehow.
Right,
Or
and we
still-
have the
So we're
mechanisms that,
starting to put some,
administration, yeah.
well,
that will take care of that,
Yeah.
right? Exactly.
And that I believe will tie to other work that the planning department is doing as far as analyzing the effect that redevelopment has in the town. So these things are going to tie down further out, and your point is certainly well heard and taken. I would agree. Absolutely, Todd.
but there's a whole lot of data that's.
Yeah.
We don't have yet.
Exactly.
Well, and I think that the climate action plan, the parks plan, maybe not quite as strongly, but the climate action plan will influence a lot. And I don't think people realize that. And we need to be looking at both of those
Mhm.
at the same time.
Mhm.
Because if we're gonna make any change or meet that 2050 goal, we've got to look at everything we do through that lens. And I don't know that we are doing that at all when we have stuff come before us. That the regulations or the reviews are not up to par, whether it's building or at, one end or planning at the other, so that's gonna influence a lot.
On Ecology Commission for a long time, we've always had like an educational goal for the commissional members each year or several, like for years, like every 3 years, we get an update on what was happening with the tailings. That's more resolved. We haven't been getting those updates. But I think to get ready for the comp plan, it'd be great for this board. Angela asked me the other night about the cap plan, and I'm gonna come back to that, but it'd be great if Zoe or Karen wanted to do a quick presentation to the entire planning board on the cap plan, because not all of us, I mean, I should, but not everybody else knows what's in it. Get up to speed, and Zoe is preparing a dashboard for it that'll be up in March maybe, or April at the latest, I would say. And that would be a quick place to go and see where we're getting the low hanging fruit done and what's ever, slipping further in the future or whatever. So I think that's important. I think, maybe a quick update from somebody at Town Park, they're changing their camping regulations. There's, lots of stuff going on there to try to meet the need. Having the discussion on how many festivals should we have and how big should they be, there's a lot of elements that, so we should spend the next several months or more, depending on our project review load, getting educated on a broader part of our community before we start down this, while we're waiting for the definitive, some of the other definitive plans out there. And I don't know if we want to do a community survey before we hire the consultant and do that, or if we want to slow down and then do the community survey, because an in-depth community survey with a big return of answers could take a while.
But it might be helpful to have a consultant help us design that.
Yeah.
Kathy, how do you envision a community survey different than the one we just did for the vision?
One we just did was junk. I've said that many times. It did not go into very many details. Why don't you look at the one we did in 2006 that had household sizes, it had how many motor vehicles do you have? So we had some idea on parking. It had a lot of measurables in it. And it was very similar to the one we had for 86 or 84 or whatever it was. So we had survey, and we had some surveys in between. So we had a series of surveys and we could see how things had changed, both opinions and our demographics. So that's what I wanted. And I was horrified at the survey that went out before we ever saw it. It didn't, in my mind, it didn't ask half the questions that we'd asked in the past that I thought were definitive in helping us make long-range decisions.
I think the other thing that we did in this past survey, which might be appropriate for a visioning survey, but perhaps not so much for the plan, is we didn't include a lot of visitors. There were a lot of visitors who were surveyed, and perhaps in this one, it's people who live or work in Telluride, or including second
More
homeowners.
targeted
Yeah,
words
slightly more
to residents.
to residents, including part-time residents, and there's also people who work here on a regular basis. And
Right.
something like that. I mean, we can talk about how to finesse that, but so we have a little bit more input from people who, work, live full-time.
At least have a
more-
PO box.
yeah, right. And a little bit less input from people who are just visiting for the first time and found this fun thing to do.
Well, I think this was valuable, and I was happy to see the way that all of the opinions coalesced. But as you know, to use Kathy's term, it does not have any actionable data from surveys.
And there are people that live in our vicinity, like in Montrose, that are people's planners who do nothing but surveys. They don't do the whole master plan or the visioning plan or anything for you. They do surveys. So, that's why I just wanted to bring up the radical idea of, should we do a survey and then have that data to be used when we hire our consultant? Or, in the past, we hired a consultant, then the consultant would hire the survey people, and then, whatever, I don't care, but I want a survey that asks many of the questions we've asked in the last 3 or 4 community surveys.
I-
Wasting lots of knowledge and lots of history, see how we've really come along. If we don't look to those surveys and ask some of those questions again.
I do know that town council has discussed an annual community survey that they would like to begin. So I know that's something that we could probably meld that into this process.
Well, do we have a separate budget for the community survey? Or do we have to spend this money on that?
Well, I mean, as part of the RFP, we could identify a community survey as part of the plan, comprehensive plan.
Whoever would actually respond to the proposal could probably have a separate consultant who specializes just in that
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
to begin the process.
Yeah.
So,
mhm.
same with, public involvement, kind of separate group.
And again, we have a lot more money budgeted so that we can
Yeah.
do a better job as far as the survey is concerned.
What else can we do to move this along now?
What's your preference as far as time frame for getting a comprehensive plan accomplished? I've worked in some communities that take 2 to 3 years to get it done. I
I
don't,
think we should proceed with all deliberate speed too.
yeah. My anticipation is that we can get it accomplished by the end of the year.
Of this year.
Yeah,
Let's see how it
that's,
goes. I mean,
that's pretty
that would be good.
That's ambitious.
That would be good.
ambitious.
It's
yeah.
ambitious, but if we can do it, great, but only if we've got time to do the survey and get the other survey done about the short-term rentals, the big survey, not just a list of how many licenses we have, which is a huge step forward.
Well, if we have, our comprehensive planning. Plan should have a comprehensive planning process,
Yes.
so.
Plan.
That's why I'm saying maybe spring of.
Yeah.
Next year, but,
spring
Maybe.
24.
but,
We might lose
give or
into-
take, because I'm hoping that we make some really pointed decisions about direction. Like Todd was saying, let's get ahead of this stuff rather than go, oh my God. What are we gonna build next because we need more housing? Without, really looking
Informed.
really far, in the future about what the character of this place is gonna be.
It's a lot of challenges. It's
Yeah.
can be a part of it.
And part of it's gonna be financial. And it's also gonna be, a change in the age. Those of us who are here, maybe not Lachey or. Anyway, the rest of us, we may not be here. So, but we still have very strong feelings about where it should go
Mhm.
and want to set, a legacy that, respond to the legacy that we had to continue some very important features of this community. And that shouldn't be lost on the folks who are coming up. So it should have, this is great from the standpoint of at least something's on paper that we can respond to. Whether or not it's not comprehensive, it's just a snapshot of how people feel about things right now, but it's not leading us.
Hmm.
And I don't think there's any.
No, I think it does a good job what it's supposed to do, but it is limited.
I think it's also, Ron, something would be good for all of us to see what other communities have done in terms of a comprehensive plan that's leading their community somewhere.
Maybe your
What are
best.
great examples that have really made a difference
Mhm.
in the trajectory of a place? And how that came about. But not only how, but what's maybe what's being done, but may or may not apply, but that, what are the components that will help leaders lead us there?
Yeah.
Charles, Lachey?
I agree with Angela. I think what another portion of that is which ones were really effective
Mhm.
and what were the differences between an effective plan and then, something that was a lot more just emotional and
Right.
not as decisive. And then what are those differentiating factors and how can we hone in on the things that made a big difference?
This is only vaguely related, but we all need to work on recruiting one more
Yeah.
NC member and alternate, because it's a great time to come on the board.
Yeah,
Right as we
thank you for
start-
putting that.
Start the.
I have a somebody that would like to
Great.
join. Yeah.
Great,
Good.
get them to please apply.
He said he went to go to apply and that it was already filled. Isn't that strange? He just texted me the other day and he said I was interested, but I guess I'm too late, so I didn't understand what that meant.
It's not filled.
I'll let him
That's
know.
why we're advertising for it. Yeah, the qualifications, the eligibility, they must be a registered town elector for 1 year before they
Yeah.
can serve.
Okay, I'll let him know.
Yeah, and maybe sit with him and show him how to get in there and type the application.
Yeah,
Talk to Phil.
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
am available.
He sent me a quick text, so I just was like, oh, okay. So I'll follow up with him.
No, there's a seat available and it's a great time to come on, right?
Yeah.
when you're Starting a project
It
like
is.
this, and you'll learn a lot and be able to go forward with
And
it.
really participate in something.
Yeah.
Interesting. Other thoughts, comments about the plan? I have one thought about something about the town retreat, which I should have mentioned earlier, but I didn't think of it. Which is, given the litigation about the warehouse that might be, which involves all three boards. By March 23rd, we may need to have an executive, it may be an opportune time, I don't know, maybe a good time to have an executive session. Where we hear from our lawyers about what's going on in that case.
There is, shoot, what's the
We just
terminology?
got an email.
Yeah, I just got,
Yeah, no, we have all the briefs
Some
now.
response and stuff.
We have all the brief.
So
We're
there should be
waiting
a
for a summary
decision.
judgment from that as well, so that should
Or denial of some region.
happen between now and then, yes, there should be a decision made between now and then, so perhaps after. a
Now in the
decision is
retreat,
made.
you mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So something will have happened, we can hear about.
yes.
And this is not, it's not really relevant to the comp plan totally, but I hear rumors that Park is almost caught up. With applications, and I wonder what's going on with building permits compared. It'd be great as a board every quarter or so to get some sense of what the development pressure is. Of course, we have all the vested rights that sit there forever. But it's nice to know, are we gonna have time and energy for long-term planning? Or are we gonna be buried? With
Yeah.
applications
That's good.
that have a good idea and see how we're doing. And
Yeah, if we've had some new hires, it'd be nice to know who they are and what they're doing and how they're maybe filling some gaps.
yeah, they can come and visit with us for 5 minutes by Zoom, and then from their house and then be back off
Or
work.
you know to say hi on the street.
Yeah, and then we'll know who they are.
Yeah,
You
Is there-
know, we've seen a little bit of a kind of a,
Different.
I wouldn't say decline, but a little bit of a,
Lull or
Stabilization,
Slow down
I
a
guess.
little bit.
yeah.
We do
since-
have-
Since last year.
Yeah, we do have a few public hearing items scheduled for next month for you guys. And I think the hard turnaround time now is a couple months, 3 months, 4 months-ish, something like that, but it's moving pretty quick.
Hmm.
They're definitely moving through this stuff.
To the restructuring of
Mhm.
how the reviews are going, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
and then what if the building permit turnaround? So if you submit your engineered plans and your HARC approval, is it 2 months, 3
weeks.
months? What?
No, I think it's about, I'm not sure, do you know?
Well,
Well,
I have 2 people retiring from that department, right?
well, we have one.
One.
And we're advertising for the building inspector. If you know anybody in that profession, let them know because it's gonna be difficult to
Yeah.
fill it, but yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Permit review.
How
timelines.
long from when you apply for your?
Well,
permit?
we do have the new online permitting system that's helped us, so I don't really know how, and that's one of those things we need to look at and see how that's changed since we implemented it. Whether the time for building permit issuance is decreasing because of that new system, which I think it is, but I can't really tell you without actually
I
looking
think
at
it's
the
about
numbers.
4 to 6 weeks turnaround. Building
That would
permits.
be remarkably short.
Oh, well, longer than my last position, but I think that's where we're at.
No, I mean, much of my 40 years of building, it was 3 to 4 months to get a
Mm.
permit and sometimes
Well,
6
some of
months.
them may still be that way, but
There
Yeah.
does seem to be a I wouldn't say a disconnect, but it's easy to submit a permit online. It's easy to meet the bare minimums of submittal requirements online. So oftentimes the plan reviewer has to reach out to the person, and say, hey, you're sort of missing a couple of things. But in general, I think it's going pretty good, the online permitting.
Much better than it used.
Yeah, way less paper in the
An
planning office.
inspector on the ground.
Yes, we're gonna be down an inspector in April, so we gotta find one.
Other thoughts? All right, it is. Actually, that clock is wrong. It's 6:58. And
Board and staff discussion, we don't have any.
we just did.
Yeah.
That was what we just did.
Yeah.
So I adjourn this meeting by unanimous consent.
Great.
Thank you, everybody.
Hmm?